I'm Martin White, founder and CTO of Ruffian Software. Our product is called TechIDManager. It is privileged account management specifically to managed service providers. This webinar, podcast, PAMcast is targeted at existing partners, people who know what TechIDManager is and use it, or people who care what changes have happened in the last month for TechIDManager. So we're going to cover all of that. Right over here is the agenda of what we're going to talk about. But like I was explaining earlier, there is something in the industry that I would like to talk about and maybe a little rant about. But first, my daughter, who I love because she's the mother of my grandson, and he's amazing. One of her favorite movies is Pirates of the Caribbean. And in Pirates of the Caribbean, there's an actor or a character, Jack Sparrow. If you've seen the movies, it's a great movies. I love them. One of the things Jack Sparrow says is the only rules that really matter are these: what a man can do and what a man can't do. This is important, and I think is very applicable to privileged account management and secrets management, insofar as I've seen a lot of companies, SaaS products, presentations, vendors saying stuff and answering very direct questions with very non-direct answers. Answers that redirect, answers that, though they are technically correct, don't address the question. I've seen people ask, what color is that turtle? And the answer will be, that turtle has 4 legs and a head and a beautiful shell. It's an answer to a question, but it's not an answer to the question was asked. And I've seen a lot of this in response to who can read data stored by SaaS vendors. And there are 2 ways that data is protected in general. There are what I call curtains, and there is cryptography. Curtains are layers of should in front of people should not see this data. We've designed the product so that people shouldn't see that data. We've designed this so that this data is protected. We've designed this so that people shouldn't be able to, or they can't read this data. When really they have the ability and they can read it, they're just not given the option to read it. This is very different from cryptography protecting data, where the actual data requires encryption to see it and decrypt it. It doesn't matter who can get to the data. There is additional steps required to be able to decrypt and use the data. With a curtain, once somebody transitions from one side of the curtain to the other side of the curtain, which requires very little usually, the data is completely readable. This is the foundation for documentation systems where you can choose who sees what. You put up a curtain, a barrier, but everybody on this side of the curtain, people you've let be on the other side of the curtain, vendor personnel are on that can read the data side of the curtain. There's a bunch of people on that other side of the curtain, and most of them you don't have control over, which is where something like vendor vetting, SOC compliance, CMMC compliance, something like that, says that the people that can see the data have been made, you trust them. They're trustworthy, so it's okay that they can see the data. They just shouldn't look at it, and they shouldn't look at it, and they probably won't do anything bad with it. Bad actors, hackers are the people that get on the other side of the curtain that cause real problems because they've gotten to the side of the curtain where they can see the data, and thus it's not protected in any other way except for that curtain. Get on the wrong side of the curtain, you can see the data. Cryptography is a different way that it is done. You actually take the data and you encrypt it so that it is unreadable, except by the people that have the keys. The ownership of the keys is very important. There are systems that I've read about, that I've seen, some of the ones I'm complaining about, I'm not going to name, where the data and the keys are all held on the other side of the curtain, and they're all held together. I know this is a really technical, really detailed, really minutiae thing, but it's important to know that as a computer scientist, computer engineer, I chose cryptography for the basis of the way all the data is stored. So it doesn't matter from TechID's perspective, TechIDManager's perspective, all the data we store we can't read because it's encrypted data that we don't have keys for. And that's a big important piece of the statement that sometimes sounds like a follow-on. but it's not. Us not having the keys is extremely important to the protection of the data. If you look closely with an eye toward software design and who has information, who can and can't access the data, look at some other products, you'll see that though they say the data is encrypted, it's encrypted and they have the key right beside it, which makes it not safe. And then you'll see some really flowery language around it. Anyway, so that's my little rant for this PAMcast. That wasn't really planned, but I got off on it. Anyway, so that's my rant. There are curtains, there's cryptography. Make sure that where data is stored is protected from all the places that you want to protect it from. Host-proof hosting, zero visibility, and zero knowledge storage. Those are important things, and those are like the keys and foundational to TechIDManager. All right, so we always put those little pre-topics in there between who am I and what new features. This time I thought I could talk about the pre-releases. Who can access pre-releases? Why would you want to access a pre-release? Pre-releases are what we at Ruffian Software do when we come out with a new feature. One of our partners requests something new. We'll develop it, we'll test it, we'll get it to the point where we've done pretty much everything we think, and this is good to go. And we'll pre-release it for a week or two. Pre-releases are in ruffiansoftware.com/pre-releases. This is a public accessible URL, but it is not published anywhere. If you just type it in ruffiansoftware.com/pre-releases, you can get here. These are versions of the agents, the tech client, the Azure install, the mobile client even, that are bleeding edge, cutting edge. We will often, if you request a specific feature in an agent or something specific in the tech client, and you tell us, we will often develop that, make a pre-release version, do our testing on it, make a pre-release version, and send it to you first and say, hey, here's that feature you asked for in pre-release. Would you like to check it out and make sure that it does what you want before we go to general release with it? Who can access pre-release? Anybody. If you are willing to take on whatever might come in a pre-release version that we have possibly not finished testing on, or that it might have some specific feature for a specific client that's not fully flushed out yet, you're welcome to try them out. The tech client's easy to roll back. The domain service is easy to roll back. The Azure version, it's easy to roll back, but it's not as easy. The mobile version, same thing. It's easy to install an older version. And as you look at the details for each release, you can see what came in this, if it's big, if it's not big, all that information's there. All right? That's what pre-releases is, and that's who it's there for. And like the domain service 5117 is still listed in pre-release, but it is also listed in the current releases because that is the current released version. Dope. I get distracted here for just a second. All right. New features. That's what pre-release is. If you want to use it, you're welcome to. It's there. New features. This is the boring technical stuff. But before we do that, since last month's PAMcast was supposed to be live from MSPGeekCon, and we didn't because of technical difficulties, let's step back to the agenda that was prepared for there, go through those real quick, and then we'll go to the new features from this month. So if we pretend that it's May 21st and we pretend that we didn't have technical difficulties and couldn't get the PAMcast done live at MSPGeekCon, I'll tell you about it. It was great. I had a really fun time at the conference. We had a booth. We met a bunch of people. I gave a short lightning talk, which should be available on mspgeekcon.com coming up soon. It was a talk about AI and people and person-to-person interactions and MSPs and follow-up on tickets and stuff like that. I think it was really good. A bunch of people nodded when I finished and clapped for me, so I was happy. I liked it. MSPGeekCon was a lot of fun. was in Florida. If you get a chance next year, I suggest you go. It is one of the more technical focused conferences. So there are more technical people. The talks are supposed to be more technical. The interaction with vendors is supposed to be more technical. As a vendor, we were asked to bring more technical people than salespeople. So that's what we did. And it was a lot of fun. The new features for last month. The Vault passwords now have an import. There's a leafs editing page. The difference between leafs and leaves is kind of an internal joke based on the English language and how the English language is not always very consistent. So there's the leaf is where things can be stored. So if you look at the tech client, these tree on the left here are leaves. You can edit the leaf for an account or the leaf for a vault, and doing that. Oh. So if you go to the management console and you get logged in and you look at agents and the details for an agent is at a leaf. So this goldfish.net agent is in the tree at development.goldfish. And if we look at the tech client, we will see that goldfish development goldfish, this agent goldfish.net is in that spot. This allows you to sort and organize all of the accounts. There are two ways to set the leaf, which we'll get to in a minute. Really easy to organize all of your managed accounts and all of your vault passwords into different organizational tree. That tree can be anything you want. They are delimited. To edit them, you go to the leaves. You can create a new leaf. You can edit the existing ones. And when you go to edit a leaf like that development goldfish one, you can see all the accounts that are all the things that are on that leaf, whether they are vaults or agents or whatever. All right. Internal server changes. We ran into a few snags. Before May 21st, the weekend before that, we did some server changes. We sent out a newsletter about it. We did some changes. There are a few snags in getting some of the data moved around, but it was over the weekend. We think we got everything done, and it seemed to go pretty well. If you ever have any issues, support at TechIDManager.com is the best way to get the help for that. We also released a tech client with some minor updates. There was an idle time and a screen lock issue that one particular partner was experiencing, where the lock screen for the tech client was coming up sooner than it should have on a very, very busy machine. And we added support for a third French keyboard. I love the French. They greatly helped us out during the Revolutionary War, but they are a crazy number of keyboards that the French have. There are like at least 3 keyboards, and they type crazy characters, and it's French. I love the Frenches. Next time, since this is the agenda from last month, you already know what's coming next time. It's what's on this agenda. So let's move on into the new features, the boring technical stuff for June 18th, 2024. We did some more internal server changes. All of those went really well. We re-infrastructured some of our servers internally, changed a bunch of things, none of which are really customer facing. They're to support some upcoming customer facing changes, but that's what a lot of the development and production team effort has been over the last month. We did a domain service release yesterday. It's a pretty big update. We went from version 4.111 to 5.117. This has quite a few changes. So if we look at those, domain service. Yeah, if we look here, you can now set the company property in AD for technician created accounts in AD. It is set by default to the company username, the username add-on, or the company name set in the tech client, but you can actually set that with the command line anything you want. You can set the MSD supported encryption types property on the created tech accounts. This means that there's some really technical details here about the type of hash that's used to transmit the password when someone logs over on to an authentication server. There are a bunch of different options. One of our partners came to us and said, hey, we need to be able to set this on these accounts, and they can do it one time, but they wanted the accounts created automatically by TechIDManager to be able to set that. So there is now a new command line called set MSDS supported encryption types, and you can give it an integer that covers whatever type of, where is that? Here it is, plus some value for whatever the supported encryption types are. And if you want to clear it so that we're no longer in control of it, you can clear it with clear MSDS supported encryption types. All right. You can, a big requested feature, since we've had agent groups, which is forever, you can now, from the command line, when you're installing an agent, tell it what agent group to request to become a member of with the agent group command line. So, somewhere here, yes. So you can domain service.exe space agent group space the name of an existing agent group, and when the agent shows up in the management console, it will request to automatically join that agent group. If that agent group exists and it's an exact match to the name, then it will join that agent group automatically. We recommend you put quotes around the agent group name in case it has spaces or some extra space doesn't get added on the command line. But you can auto join an agent group. So if you have in the management console an agent group called level 1 domains like this, a command line such as domain service.exe space agent group space level 1 domains will make that agent group automatically join that agent group. That agent join that agent group. You can run this just like all these command lines. You can run them at any time you want, now or in the future. If you have existing agents already installed, once they are version 5.117 or newer, you can run domain service.exe space agent group space some existing group, and they will get added to that group automatically. A very similar thing happens for leaves now. An agent, the domain service, can request to be, for its accounts to be at a specific leaf in the tech client or in the management console. This works the same way with the leaf value. If the agent, you do domain service.exe space leaf space the name of some value or the name of some leaf, if that leaf matches and it already exists, the agent will be put on that leaf. We suggest, again, the use of quotes. Remember that the name has to match exactly. We're not going to automatically create leaves or agent groups, because if you're doing this with a script and you get the wrong value in there, you could accidentally create 1,000 agent groups or 1,000 leaves that you didn't mean to create, and that would be a big nightmare to get rid of. So the agent group or the leaf has to exist before the agent requests to be added to it. As soon as it exists and it's requested, it'll be added. We have some internal agent verification changes, private keys inside. We made some refinements in the install script. We removed the optional comments that were before some of the setting lines, because that was a point of contention for some people trying to modify PowerShell scripts. So those are slightly different. There are changes to the internal encryption encoding for the passwords, not to the encryption algorithms, but to the encoding. We went from a Microsoft-specific octet-octet format to a base64 encoding. So it's just for us internally. You'll probably never even see or notice. We maintained all the backward compatibility on it, so version 5s that do base64 encoding, the server will convert to the oct-oct-oct format automatically. We upload all the options to the management console, and pretty soon you'll be able to see all of the options for a particular agent in the management console instead of just the select options such as OU and username that you can see now. We also made some improvements on duplicate tech name handling. There have been a couple of places where people have had techs with duplicate names, different cases, or overlapping names, or the username formatting has made overlapping tech names happen. We changed some of the way that is handled so that it is less problematic. All right. As always, the download link, the install scripts are all right there. If you have any questions, let us know. We're here to help. In general, you can set more stuff about accounts, and you can request agent groups or leafs directly from the install of the agent. We made some management console cleanup. Back to the same place. If we look at the central host list here, the big changes we made on the management console listed here. Leaves in the tech client. So you look here, you see this leaf tree. We used to show all leaves. If you had a leaf, it was shown in the tech client. This is probably not right. We had some internal discussion about it. One of our partners came to us like, hey, for both co-managed and some lower level technicians, they don't really need to see all of that. It's getting in the way. Can we only show the leaves that they should see? So that's what we changed to. It's a great idea. We love our customer feedback, love our partner feedback. So now you only see a leaf in this tree if you have access to an account or access to a vault that is on that leaf. Real minor change, but really nice, I think. We cleaned up and added some additional features for leaf management. Added an icon. I love icons. The little RS icon is now the fav icon for the management console. Here's a big one. We added REST API documentation, which is, I believe, a separate issue we're going to talk about later. There was an issue with the Mac OS tech clients and some enabling of JIT accounts that existed for 3 or 4 days. That's been addressed. It was only for some Mac tech clients on some sites. That's been fixed. We added paging to the triplet access report. Really standard paging. We did some additional server-side hardening, including removal of support for TLS 101.1.1. And we added a bunch of internal features for upcoming support of setting command line options. Here's a little secret. Right now, all options are set from the agent, except for from the agent's command line, the domain service command line, inside the Azure tenant for the Azure agents, because that has some serious security benefits to it. We are going to optionally give you the ability to set those options from the management console. So if you decide you've installed the agent, you won't have to remote back into that place to change those. We're going to add some ability to change options inside the management console, such as OU, the format of usernames, a couple other things like that. So all the options you can set from the command line, you'll also be able to set from the management console. And we did a bunch of other internal cleanup, paid off some technical debt, stuff like that. All right. One of those, probably more transparent than business people say I should be, but we have paid off quite a bit of technical debt in the last couple months as far as server-side infrastructure goes. None of it was security bugs. It was just all technical debt. We switched from one REST API provider to a more modern REST API provider, a few other things like that. If you have any issues or problems, like always, support at ruffiansoftware.com and we'll get working on them. Oh, so we for a while had an API, an open REST API where you could go and in the management console generate a key and set a host address, and then that IP address could make REST API calls to your central host with that API key and do literally anything the management console does. That is now in the process of getting documented. We have a Swagger doc server at chdoc.ruffiansoftware.com/swagger that lists the REST API for the management console and for the central host. If you're familiar with this, yay, it is getting flushed out. Right now it is there and gives you the broad stroke of it, but we are flushing out all the parameters, all of the other options that are there and giving you valid values for them. You can even try out some of them right now. So like this /management/time, you can execute it and see that our server thinks it is 2024-06-18 at 19:28:44. So it thinks it's the 18th at 6 p.m. and 28 minutes, which is correct because they're all in UTC. All right. You can look through these if you have any questions or your developers have any questions about any of these API do. support@techidmanager.com, and we will help with that. Since this is beginning documentation, it is not flushed out and not complete yet. We are still making the offer that if there is something you want to automate with TechIDManager, let us know, and we will write or help you write a C# executable that does that thing with our REST API based on your information. All right? That's our doc server. Those are kind of all the features that have come out in the last month, 2 months really, because we missed the May one. This is the June one. For next time, there are 2 big features right here that are on the way. We have an update agents service coming. This is something that people have asked about repeatedly, something that we have really been on the fence about doing for some very specific security reasons. One of our tenants, like we don't keep keys, which I talked about earlier and kind of got sidetracked on, is very important to us. And we don't do remote code execution is also very important to us. So we have taken the we don't do remote code execution and we've kind of slipped around that by we're going to have a second agent service that will do updating of the domain service if you want. It's optional. You can install it or not install it. The primary agent that we put out the domain service will still not do any remote code execution. It won't auto update, but there will be a service that will do that. You can always still use the scripts. We're still going to produce those so that with every release, you'll get an update script that you can just run anywhere that has the domain service installed. It'll update it to that version. We're also going to put an update agent that will keep it up to date, unbeknownst, or well, kind of in the background, if you install that agent. That's what that is. Along with this, as part of that, well, this and the REST API, there will be something that quite a few people have asked for, a URL that you can go to get the latest version of any of the tools, of the agent, of the Windows agent, of the Azure agent, of the tech client. There'll be a URL you can go to and get information about the latest release, the stability on it, and all that other kind of stuff. All right? This is something people have asked for, and we listen, we provide. Sometimes me and our development staff have internal discussions and arguments about, well, whether something is, how important it is, where it should come on the priority list, and frankly, whether or not we think that it's a good security idea. Because that is like the core, like because we do privilege account management and secrets management, whether something is a good idea from a security perspective is kind of the overarching theme to any of the internal discussions that we have. So that is really the sticking point for why we haven't done an update agent, is because we refuse to do remote execution in the agent. And when we decided, well, we can do that in a separate agent and people have the option to install it or not, we're like, yeah, we can do that. Partners are asking for it. We'll do that. All right. So that's coming probably before the end of next month, or before the PAMcast next month. That'll be available. The APIs are already all there. You can see in the REST documentation. It's mostly working. It's going through testing. The other one, the Azure Agent version 5.0. Right now, the Azure Agent is version 4.103. It is written in .NET 6.0. And as I'm sure everyone is aware, because several partners have forwarded me the emails about it, and Microsoft's making a big deal about it. This November, .NET 6.0 will no longer be supported as the executing engine for an Azure function. Since it runs an Azure function, we're being forced to roll up to .NET 8.0 and the isolated worker model. This is probably the third time that Microsoft has enforced a requirement to make some changes on the function. Not a problem. It's a pretty straightforward change. We're working our way through it. So that's coming. Either the first or second Azure Agent version 5.0 will be in .NET 8.0, and there'll be a real straightforward update process for that. We are also looking at a mass update process for the Azure agents, because if we're going to do auto updating for the domain service, it's kind of really a slap in the face if we don't also provide an easy way to do the Azure agent update. It's a little more difficult because of, like we said, we're a security company. The overarching theme is the security is more important than efficiency. We made that choice at the beginning of the company. We continue to stand by that. Security is more important than efficiency as long as we can get, and we're going to get as much efficiency as we can. So we're working on it. Hang with us. We understand the pain and the issues and all that kind of stuff. All right. That was a lot of talking. Let me grab a quick drink of my tea out of my 𝗁𝗂𝗶̱ cup today because I love Cheetahs. I have a zebra one of these cups too. I like it. All right. So that kind of wraps up all the changes that have happened for both May and June. What we're going to talk about next time, what has happened so far, the big takeaways, the requesting the agent group in Leaf, and documentation, and we made a bunch of internal server changes. Those are the 3 big takeaways. All right. We're here to help. If you have any concerns, comments, or questions, TechIDManager or support@techidmanager.com. All right. Thanks. Y'all have a great day, and I will talk to you all later.